Hello, YouTube. I hope you just enjoyed my favorite Tarkov clip of the last 30 days. And I have to say, it's a perfect summation of my experience learning Escape from Tarkov. For those of you that don't know me, I am Dubpace, a Twitch streamer that has been a lifelong PC gamer and avid fanatic of hardcore PC games. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my experience learning Escape from Tarkov, in which I streamed on Twitch days 1 through 30 of my entire learning experience. I'm going to look back on day 1 and recount just what the entire experience has been like. I actually first learned about Escape from Tarkov almost 3 years ago when the game was originally making the rounds on Twitch. There were some viewers that came to my chat and asked if it was a game that I was interested in and if it was a game that I was going to play on stream. At the time, I was really teeter-tottering and on the fence. I checked out a few streams of EFT and found that the game was visually really hard to understand what was going on. And compared to really simple battle royale games where it's very obvious what's happening in the game and the objective, I found Tarkov really confusing. And but despite those opinions of mine, I still decided to purchase the game in January of 2018, but I only played it once or twice and found myself completely overwhelmed and just didn't even know how to start playing the game. And so before I go into my exact journey of launching the game and playing it, I wanted to bring up something that might even sound ridiculous, which is that I didn't even understand what type of a game Escape from Tarkov was for months, if not like for years. It was very confusing to me what it is. And so even when I go to Battlestate Games' website and look at their official definition, this is what it says. Escape from Tarkov is a hardcore and realistic online first-person action RPG / simulator with MMO features and a story-driven walkthrough. So I don't know about you, but that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That's a whole lot of words to describe a type of a game, which should have been my first indication that Tarkov is a completely different beast from any other shooter on the market. There are games that are maybe kind of similar in some ways, or like some games have some features shared with Tarkov, but it's a really unique beast, and that's why it's not so clearly defined by a genre. Since Classic WoW was the last game that I played, I find myself constantly relating WoW to Tarkov, even though they're entirely different games, so bear with me during some of these descriptions. Now that I've played the game a considerable amount, I understand way better what Tarkov really is, and I know that my confusion about what sort of game Escape from Tarkov is, it's not unique to just me. I've had several people ask me for clarifications, so I thought I would just give my own take on the game and mention familiar elements that I've seen in other games, and then where Tarkov really differentiates itself from other games. If I were to relate Tarkov directly to Classic WoW, you might find many familiar elements, including loot. The whole game is basically about loot. Looting is super satisfying. There's a gigantic variety of different types of loot that you can pick up. And it's all really based in reality. A lot of the items that you'll find are real items like toothpaste, medical supplies, ammo, weapons, weapon modifications, computer parts like solid state drives, flash drives. Basically, if you can think of it, it's probably in Tarkov. There is just a massive amount of loot, which is, for me, the #1 draw. I love games with loot. I love messing with loot. I love looting things. I love getting loot. I love being rich with loot. It's part of what drives me as a gamer. Some other obvious familiar elements within the game are vendors, which happen to also be quest givers. There's also a flea market, aka auction house, with a real in-game economy, which to me is just a mandatory element to be paired with a very loot-intensive game. What's the point of getting a bunch of cool loot if you can't sell it on the auction house, you know? And there's also fun stuff like crafting as well. There's a whole hideout system where you can upgrade your hideout to craft better things and provide other in-game bonuses. And those are pretty much the more traditional MMO-like elements that I found within Tarkov that any experienced gamer would recognize right away. So where does Tarkov really diverge from other familiar games within this genre? Well, for me, it comes with the number one feature of the game, which is that it's the most punishing death system of all time. Every time you die, you lose everything that you're carrying. With exceptions, there's insurance, but typically speaking, when you die, you lose everything you're carrying, including your weapon, including the loot that you spent time to be picking up within the raid, including anything that you looted from other players' bodies. When you die, you lose it all. So it is extremely punishing. The second major thing that differentiates Tarkov from other games within this genre is just the core gameplay itself. So compared to a game like Classic WoW, which is largely open world, you could travel all throughout the world of Warcraft, and then there are some instanced raids and instanced dungeons throughout that world. Tarkov is a little more closed off than that. And it's essentially everything is an instanced raid, is what they call it, in which you load in and you need to extract from that raid to survive and keep all of the gear that you carried in and all of the loot that you obtained during that raid. So why the heck did I go into all of this detail about understanding what type of game Tarkov is? Well, because ultimately this was the first barrier of me getting into the game. If I didn't understand the game from a bird's eye point of view, then I couldn't even engage with the game. And that was part of why I felt so overwhelmed really early on, is because I just didn't get it. Tarkov is a really unique game, and there's no other game that you can say like, oh, it's just like X, Y, or Z game. That just doesn't exist. It's not that type of game. It's a whole new genre in and of itself. I did want to bring up hardcore games. I have always been a fan of hardcore games, and Google said hardcore games are those that require players to invest a lot of time to learn, and as a result have the highest engagement among game genres. Hardcore games and those who play them will often seek out content outside the game when they're not playing. And this perfectly describes Tarkov to me, because a huge part of picking up this game was accepting in my heart that I was about to embark on one of the most intense learning curves of all time with this game. I have a long history playing MMOs and hardcore games, and when I first started playing Tarkov, I was immediately reminded of this old school comic. I used to play this spaceship game called EVE Online, and it was actually very similar to Tarkov in the sense that when you died in EVE, your ship was destroyed. It was gone forever. Similar to Tarkov, how when you die, your gear that you're carrying is gone forever. And there was this hilarious comic, and it shows this ultra steep learning curve that's just, it's more of like a learning cliff, and there's people falling off it, people are hanging from it, people are bulldozing those that weren't able to make it. EVE Online was another really crazy game where there needed to be a large amount of time spent learning about the game and just gathering game knowledge in order to be successful. And I would say Tarkov falls on that exact same curve that EVE Online did, however many years ago that was. But don't just take my word for it. For those of you that don't know, Nikita is the COO of Battlestate Games, the developer of Escape from Tarkov, and for all intents and purposes, he's the highest on the food chain that the community really gets to interact with, and most of our reputable info about the game comes from Nikita himself. Check out what Nikita has to say about the hardcore nature of this game.
We're talking about this game, it's this hardcore, very realistic. We'll talk about some of the realistic elements here soon, but, what kind of gamer did you build this, with this in mind?
I will describe it like player who is ready to struggle, who is aware about that the game will be punishable, and the person he must be ready not having fun, actually.
Because supposed to be ready to not have fun.
So the developers themselves say that you should be ready to not have fun when learning their game. That's when you know that you're encountering that cliff of a learning curve. And it all goes back to what I said before at the very beginning of this video. Embarking on this adventure, it feels very overwhelming, but I think that that's also just why it's so rewarding. You know that this is just a game, and you know that you can learn anything, and you know that you can tackle this with a positive learning attitude, and hopefully on the other side have some fun. So without further ado, I do want to show you what little Timmy looked like when I first started playing the game. And we're going to jump to my very first stream of Tarkov on Twitch, which at this point was about a little over a month ago. And I will show my first 5 raids and exactly what happened in them for your viewing pleasure and my displeasure. Shaking off my potato aim from the first raid, I jumped straight into a second raid on my PMC, and you'll see. I kind of want to shove this up my ass. Despite getting absolutely obliterated in my first 2 raids, my spirits were still high, and in my third raid, we're going to jump into a clip in which I had just gotten into a gunfight with a guy for the first time. I did hit him, I heard a noise, and I really wanted to go in for the kill. Damn it! I should have known he's just camping. He's not moving, he's not doing anything. Oh my god. At this point, I had gotten the hint that fighting near the big red warehouse in Customs was in fact very dangerous, so I ventured towards a very safe place, the dorms. Oh my god. With my scav on cooldown after that dorm's death, I had to load in on my PMC, and as I'm coming off of 4 deaths, I loaded in with just a pistol. And finally, on my 6th raid of the stream, as a scav, I actually started to have a good run. I got near the extraction point. That's when I encountered another scav that I happened to engage. Where's the extract? To the right of the rails in the grass right here? To the right or the left? To the right or the left? To the right or the left? Oh yeah. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. I've escaped from Tarkov. Oh. By the end of my first day, I went back, I watched the VOD, I tried to get a vibe of my general feelings for the game, and I could tell I was borderline frustrated. I specifically described the experience as rough, and I think that that's going to be typical of any Tarkov player's experience. So let's jump ahead 30 days in time and let's see how I feel about the game 30 days later. And boom, we are 30 days in the future. And looking back at those day one clips, I'd say that the number one thing that I was lacking in all of those deaths was just experience. I didn't have enough experience knowing all of the small things in Tarkov, like how to know what sound means what, or spawn locations on a map, or just general areas of high interest where I'm very likely to encounter other players. I just was lacking experience as a whole. And luckily, that is really easily resolved simply by playing the game, making mistakes, and unfortunately, dying a lot in this game. And that last part is really, really important to me. Dying is key. If you're watching this video, whether you're an experienced Tarkov player or somebody just picking up the game, I think we can all agree that death is the common denominator that really binds us all together. All of us die in Tarkov, and I think that the difference between someone who doesn't like Escape from Tarkov as a game and someone that loves Escape from Tarkov, I think it just comes down to your attitude towards dying. When you die, are you that type of person where your blood boils and you start to rage and you tilt and you make bad decisions and you just are angry at the game or certain situations? Or are you the type of player that takes a learning attitude and tries to analyze what happened when they died and tries to learn from it? Because ultimately, this game is all about learning. The fun in this game is the fact that when you start out, you're like a fly. You can just tickle the people that have been playing the game for 3 years. They know so much about the game. And not only that, I started playing the game late in the wipe, meaning that players had already accumulated a small fortune and were running super amazing weapon loadouts, high tier armor, helmets, headsets. Everyone was geared out of their brains when I was an absolute noob. But despite that, the amazing, rewarding part of the game is you know that if one day, if you stick with Tarkov, you will become one of those players. You will become one of those people that's experienced and has map knowledge that gives you an advantage over somebody else. Or you're a player that's experienced and you know really effective farms to get money, and you use that money to fuel better loadouts and ensure that you have an advantage with the gear that you're taking in. Ultimately, the game is all about learning. And if you can't learn from your mistakes and your deaths and the experiences within the game, then Tarkov will never be a good game for you. But I will say that in 30 days, you will likely have a pretty good understanding of how EFT works and at least have a really good fundamental basis to learn more about the game. So I became really proficient in playing one map, Customs. but there's several other maps, and as soon as I go into a new map, it's like I'm a noob all over again. I go back to square one. And if that doesn't sound appealing to you, and you don't like that idea, then I don't think Tarkov would ever be a good game for you. But for me, I love it, and that's what fuels me to play the game a lot, is I want to keep learning, and I want to keep getting an advantage over other players by embracing the difficulty of the game. And that's really my big picture analysis of what I truly learned during my first 30 days in Tarkov. And to everybody watching, I do want to ask, is there anyone else out there that's learning Tarkov for the first time right now? And how many of you remember what your experience was like when you first started learning Tarkov? Is it similar to mine or different? Let me know in the comments section below. And of course, please stay tuned for more Escape from Tarkov content coming soon. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll catch you next time.